Hey guys, welcome back again, and tonight I'd like to teach you how to play against very annoying Scandinavian, actually martial gambit in the Scandinavian opening. Many of you asked me, Maya, could you do a video and give us suggestion and what to do if this happens? Well, that's why I'm here, and I'll give you some very interesting proposals. So, let's get started. It begins after e4, d5, e takes, and they do not take by queen, but play knight f6. You all know that this looks very annoying because you don't know if you should defend this pawn. If you defend it, should you defend it by pawn on c4? Should you do it by knight on c3? Should you play bishop b5, what Caruana did it once? But basically, all these moves are just fine, but there is like one especially good, d4. So the answer on all your problems should be A, play d4. So what's the point of this? You just continue to develop yourself, and on the top of all that, you just open up both of your bishops, bishop on c1 and bishop on f1. They have two possibilities. To go into the martial variation with knight takes d5, it's not anymore gambit because they do not sacrifice and they don't want to play the rest of the game being down a pawn, and they can play Portuguese gambit with the bishop g4. I'd like to give you a couple of interesting options depending on your style, what to do if bishop g4 happens. If Portuguese gambit happens, then you have lots of possibilities. For example, I remember once I played against Nigel Short, and he played f3, and when I played bishop f5, he did g4, and I played bishop g4, bishop g6, I was black. He played c4, I did e6, and you know what? This is the critical moment of this variation. It's fantastic for black if you take on e6. I was looking forward to Nigel Short's answer here, and I said, oh, I'm gonna crush him within like 15 moves because I knew the analysis at that time. But then all of a sudden he played knight c3. I said, it's weird. So I captured on d5, and Short instantly played knight h3. Before I continue showing you his plan and idea, thanks to which I managed to win so many games in the past, instead of knight h3, engines constantly keep on playing g5, and when you play knight after d7 or knight to h5, they take on d5, but knight after d7 is the move. They just take on d5, and that's the way to go. So I don't want to bother you with this stuff. Why just grabs the pawn, then black has like a more solid pawn structure, not exposed king on e1, and certainly black has a certain compensation, but the thing is, engines like material, they're so precise in calculation, and they know how to defend. Although Nigel Short played against me knight h3, I said, okay, no big deal, so let me capture. I did capture, and I believe, if I remember correctly, that he did something like bishop d6. He played knight, actually I did bishop d6, he did knight f4, castles, and played h4. When I played rook e8, he played king f2. The top thing here was that right after this move, I realized that I was almost lost. He was threatening h5, he threatened to take on g6 followed by h5, he even threatened g5. I cannot go and attack isolated pawn on d4, and all of a sudden I got crushed so badly. Also, apart from this relatively concrete, sharp, and I would say engine continuation, you can play on Portuguese gambit also variation with bishop b5. This continuation is usually for those who like stats. For example, statistics says that this is one of the most successful lines against the Portuguese gambit. And after bishop b5, they can play c6 because you just take and play knight e2, and you're just up a pawn and get a nice game. But in case they play knight bd7, you now have two options. you have statistically the most successful continuation for white, and it's lined with f3, bishop f5, and c4, where you just decide to defend the one pawn on d5, and afterwards when they play like e6 to capture, bishop e6, d5, kicking the bishop away, play knight c3, and they put all their hopes in these bishops. Very strong and active bishop on c5, and relatively good and active bishop on f5. Here you need to know the next move. Without the next move you can't play this line successfully, and it's queen e2. Queen e2 gives you a check, but more importantly, in case of king f8, opposes the strong bishop on c5 with a bishop on e3, and keep on exchanging pieces should suit your position, because you're up a pawn and you're happy to exchange pieces. In case of queen e7, well, we're already happy with this because we're up a pawn, and sooner or later these queens are going to be traded off. And I want to just show you one more line here that I like very much. I was shown this by one of my students, and Nikolai told me about the line with knight c3 and after a6, so instead of c4, knight c3, a6, bishop a4, b5, and when they play knight b6, you play knight e2. They capture, you capture, and you play knight g3. You cannot even imagine how many nice and easy blitz games I won using this system, because when they go with bishop g6, f4 threatening f5 to win the bishop, they gotta go with a6, you play f5, and when they capture by pawn, you play castles, bishop e7, knight f5, they usually capture, because in case of bishop f6, queen e2, so bishop f5, rook f5, you threaten both, knight on d5 and pawn on f7, they gotta go like this, queen f3, threatening both, and all of a sudden you're not interested in miserable pawn. No, man, I want to play with the bishop pair, with the pressure on the f7 and d5 pawns. I'd like to develop my bishop here and place my rook either on e1 or on f1. White seems to be a lot better. I gave you 4 different, maybe even 5 approaches against the Portuguese gambit. But if you're not satisfied with any of the previously mentioned, then play the most boring but most solid. Play bishop e5 check, and when they play knight b7, bring your bishop back to e2. So this is for you guys who don't seem to like too much tactics, you who just want to have like steady and very solid type of advantage, and well, I don't like this kind of chess, but still, position is better for white. Bishop e2, queen e2, knight e5, c4, knight f3, castles, knight c3, rook e1, bishop f4, bring your rook on d1, and you just play like I used to teach my son or kids or those young players. You hold the center, you have a nice control of the center, both of your rooks are on open files, E and D places, knights are on f3 and c3, this is like a school type of position, and nice, very solid advantage for white. I gave you 5 different approaches for all kinds of players. Crazy guys, engine guys, those who like statistics, those who like boring games, and finally I gave you even the very interesting option from one of the recent Russian magazines. And there is another line when they don't want to play the Portuguese gambit, but they want to play knight d5 Martial variation. Well, there is no too many, doubts and options here. We just go with the knight on f3. This knight on f3 is very important to be done right now because it stops e5 forever. Because imagine that you play c4. I know a guy from my city who after knight b6 played knight c3. He was a pretty good FM when he played this against somebody, and this guy played e5. That's why we want to play knight f3 right on time. They have 2 options, bishop g4 and g6. In case of bishop g4, you just go like a Carlsen. I always want to tell you, always play this h3 move. h3 is more like questioning pulse of your opponent and his intentions in the game. Is he gonna take and give you the bishop pair which is absolutely terrible here because you're going to play c3 and get a bishop here and absolutely good control of the game. Or they're going to play bishop h5. If that happens, you play just like Carlsen against Adiban and Kasparov in his simul games. After e6, castles, bishop e7. Take a look at this Kasparov's move. The guy captured, he did capture by queen, brought a rook on d1, kicked the knight away with c4, brought the knight into the center, and made typically move in my style that I like so much. And this is exactly my suggestion for you. Rook lifting, baby. Rook d3 goes on g3 onto the king side. You want to place your bishop on h6, g5, f4 afterwards. Keep this knight on e5 stuck there, and it is actually going to help you a lot in terms of creating and just helping the attack on the king side. Kasparov won this game in a couple of moves. Queen c7, bishop f4, rook to g3, played rook to d1. When he developed all these pieces, he just played rook f3 to avoid knight h5, threatening bishop h6, followed by knight f7. The guy played like this, played queen to e3, and this guy in like 4 moves resigned. And instead of this, instead of e6 that allows knight e5, what Kasparov did, Adiban played against Carlsen knight e6. Then you play c3. You do not play knight e5 here. That's very important because they take, and if you take by queen, they will take by pawn on e2. And if you ever wonder why do you play first c3, in order to defend this pawn on d4, so you can be able to jump with the knight on e5 afterwards. When they play bishop e7, you play knight e5. Now you see the point. If they capture, Adiban captured on e5, but if they capture on e2, you just recapture by queen, hold the control of the center, and by the way, now these pawns are connected and well defended. So after knight e5, bishop h5, knight g6, Magnus Carlsen could have brought this bishop back to f3, and do I have to explain it to you? Play g3, fianchetto that bishop on g2. After that, you will be threatening c4 followed by knight c3, rook e1, and so many other ideas like that one. White just looks tiny, but a long time better. And you know what? This is like a very nice line if they play early bishop g4. But what's going to happen if they play g6? Here, I just want to show you a very simple line. c4, knight b6, h3. It's very important to restrict the activity of the light square bishop. Once you do it, the light square bishop becomes a very bad piece. They go with bishop g7, knight c3, castles, bishop e3, knight c6, and you go with bishop e2. It's a nice one. It's a nice development for you, and that's not the only move. For example, I know for many years that this has been like one of the most popular lines against this, and then you just go with some very interesting continuations after e5, d5, and when they play knight a5 threatening this one, you just go b3, and now you see the point of queen d2. They do not have e4. They still do e4. You bring your knight to d4. They play f5 to play f4, but you just tell your opponent, man, I don't care. I'm going to play like this, and I'm just going to crush you afterwards. They just go with this move, threatening f4, c5, e3. But doesn't matter. You can, in the worst case scenario, play long castle, and you're just so much better. That's the way to go there. Although my vote goes to simple development move, bishop e2. When they play e5, d5, knight a7. By the way, any knight a5, now the queen is not on d2. You play knight d2 and say, man, I'm threatening b4 to win the piece on the spot. But I'm also threatening bishop c5 followed by bishop e4, believe it or not. They have to go knight e7 and watch out not to blunder knight f5. Well, if you do blunder this one, you know what I'm saying here. Just pack your stuff, quit this game, and switch it for something else, probably bowling. So you just have to go with g4, stop knight f5, they gotta go f5, and bring the queen on b3. Once you do it, you're just so much better. The next move is long castle. If they capture on g4, you just take and play knight g5, exchanging the light square bishops, trying to jump on e6, threatening h7 pawn. If they play f4, bring your bishop on c5, control e4, and get a nice game. If they play king h8, play the long castle, followed by d6, killing both. Knight on e7, queen on d8, but at the same time, knight on b6 is hanging. Everyone just goes with e4, then you play knight g5, and on h6, I'll show you the refutation, the move that I found a couple of years ago. I played it against a student of mine, then I found that somebody played this in one of the games, and by this moment, and this is like the 28th of, actually, by this moment, I found like, I believe 28 games where white played and went for this, and they just went castle. I'll give you enough time to analyze at home, to figure out all the refutations, but I'm just gonna show you the most forcing one. One of my opponents captured on g5, I played c5. He did capture second piece, and I said, man, I'm not interested in taking your pieces. I want to mate your king. I played d6, and soon after, he resigned. Hope that you enjoyed in tonight's lecture, and see you next time. Bye-bye.